Thank you for joining our webinar, How a Digital Business Can Drive Performance Management. I'm Janet Eden-Harris, the Chief Marketing Officer here at Four Winds Interactive. Since I've been working with the business, I've been struck by how much expertise there is here, from best practices in finance and HR to operations and sales management. I thought that many of you might just be interested in learning from some of that hard-won knowledge that you could apply in your own organizations. So we've created a new executive webinar series that will be running for the next few months. I'm particularly pleased to kick off the inaugural series with Nigel Alexander, our CFO. When I asked Nigel to present for this first session, I knew he was driving performance improvements in his team and using our software to do it. But little did I realize just how much the visual layer shown on screens throughout his department is helping support that change, and how measurable it all is. Before we get started, though, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. First, to limit background noise, we've placed all participants on mute. But that doesn't mean that we don't want your questions. We will have a Q&A session at the end and encourage you to send any questions or comments to the email you see on the screen, webinar@fourwindsinteractive.com. We'll be monitoring those live, and we'll get to as many of the questions as we can in the half hour we have. If we don't get to your question, however, we'll be sure to follow up with you directly. We'll also be recording this session, so if you'd like a copy, use that same email to let us know, and we'll get the materials to you. And now, to kick things off, we'd like to open with a quick video from our CEO, David Levin, talking about what it means to operate in the new digital workplace.
I'm David Levin. I'm the CEO of Four Winds Interactive. And we like to think of ourselves as the visual layer in the digital business, enabling organizations to engage their customers and their workforce by putting the right information on the right screen at the right time in a visually engaging way, all from a single software platform. This webinar series is designed to bring answers to the questions that most organizations are facing when they think about how to communicate effectively in today's digital world. To your customers, to your workforce, to your students and fans, to anyone who you interact with in a meaningful way. In today's webinar, we're going to take a closer look at how this visual communications approach can help senior executives improve an organization's performance by keeping employees informed about the KPIs that really matter. It's presented by our CFO, Nigel. Now, Nigel's been an advocate of using digital solutions to communicate with his teams for years. As part of this series, he went back and looked at the ROI. I think you'll find the results are fascinating, and we're excited to kick off our webinar series with Nigel's presentation.
Thank you, David, and hello to everybody on the call today. Since time is by far your most precious commodity, I'll be as efficient as possible. This presentation will last exactly 21 minutes, and after that we'll open it up for a few questions. You'll be back to work in 30 minutes, guaranteed. The legal team has asked me to make the following disclaimer, thankfully not too long. Returns on investment from expenditures on a visual communications program are affected by a number of variables, and any results obtained are a factor of those variables, and nothing in this presentation should be interpreted as a guarantee of a particular result. As David mentioned briefly, I've been a huge believer in improving KPI performance through visual display for well over 15 years, long before I joined Four Winds. But rather than go back in history and pick my best of, I decided to give you a look at some of the very recent materials we've been displaying in the Four Winds Finance Department to drive employee performance. I'll also give you some numbers on the ROI we've achieved and give you a basic framework for calculating ROI on investments in your own visual layer. In subsequent webinars, other Four Winds leaders will take you through the way they use the visual layer in sales, operations, and human resources. We hope you'll join us for the seminar series and encourage others from around your organization to do so as well. Sound good? Okay, let's get going. I'm sure you've all heard of Peter Drucker. Drucker created original research on a wide range of business topics, but perhaps the most well-known soundbite is his phrase, "What gets measured gets managed." This is a foundational building block of modern business and the basis for the whole data visualization industry that's exploding right now. My own direct experiences tell me that if I can get clear visibility on key metrics, I can improve them. However, with all due deference to Mr. Drucker, he missed a key element of the concept, or at least a key opportunity. What he should have said is, what gets measured and displayed gets managed. Measurement alone is only half the battle. What use is the measurement calculated by one person, buried deep in a PC, and not shared openly with the rest of the organization? I would submit very little. Today we'll talk about best practices and top tips generally, using our own first-hand experiences as a baseline. While Drucker's theories are foundational, another of my biggest influences is Jack Stack, who wrote The Great Game of Business about the merits of open book management. I recommend this very highly. A huge trend for today's digital business information sharing, which creates improvements in employee engagement and performance. As Gartner highlighted in its recent conference, promoting collaboration is the key. In 2015, employees want more control, more understanding, more power to influence, and more opportunity to be heard, and more communication than ever before, all in real time. This is true of all our team members, but particularly relevant to the millennial generation who have a need to know why they are doing things, not just that they need to be done. I would suggest that if you've not yet bought into the concept of sharing information with the people who directly drive your outcomes, you may not be ready for an investment in this aspect of visual communications. Stack states, information on well-defined key metrics, properly displayed, drives extraordinary performances and unexpected benefits, and I fully agree with him, as you'll see in a moment. Thanks to software technologies like 4Winds Content Manager, it's now relatively easy to create and display information and drive results. So where do you start? The first thing to understand is that in any business, every single group of people, no matter how big or small, have key metrics. When these are well understood, clearly communicated, and smart goals are set, the needle will move. Finding KPIs is generally pretty easy, and usually the first place people start. However, the same is true equally of other departments. Customer service, finance, legal, product management, marketing, all have key metrics underlying their day-to-day activities which, if measured and displayed, will improve. So the first step for any manager is to get crystal clear on the key drivers that will get his company, division, or department to its long and short-term goals. Chances are you already know the key drivers of performance for your organization, but if you don't, I would suggest that you start this project by taking the dollars you were thinking of investing with 4Winds and spend them to identify your KPIs. For without that clarity, your visual communications investment will likely underperform. Thankfully, finding KPIs isn't usually hard. They should be the things you measure every day, either formally or informally. However, as I'll tell you in a minute, getting the visual display right to drive the behaviors you want can take some thought and experimentation. So here's the first example I promised you from our own experiences with the FWI finance team. We have about 24 people in 4 billing and accounts receivable teams. Like our sales organization, they're aligned into groups that serve industry verticals. This is their workspace, and as you can see, there are screens above each team. These screens are rotating content through the day using 4Winds Content Manager software. The content is pulled automatically by the software from a wide variety of sources on autopilot and requires very little daily maintenance. This is tip number 3. Set up your content to be automatically created, so it only takes you a few minutes each day to maintain it. Any longer than this, and our experiences tell us that you may simply be too busy. Of course, 4Winds software does this for you automatically, integrating seamlessly with over 75 back-end and middleware systems. These are the billing teams, so we display localized content to each, as well as departmental statistics and broader company content that's interesting, informative, and engaging to them. Tip number 4 is to dedicate a screen to each group and show a mixture of local content down to the team level, intermediate content, perhaps department level, and then company-wide content. The first KPI screen I want to show you is my absolute favorite. Why? Because when we published it, it created unexpected results that none of us saw coming. And it's a perfect example of why the visual layer can deliver unexpected and extraordinary ROIs. In 2015, the 4Winds billing teams will manage over 20,000 individual transactions of different types for over 60 million in total revenue. Since we deliver a 100% turnkey solution to our customers, this involves specifying our own software, a wide variety of hardware and enclosures, and a broad set of services to customize the applications that help you, our customers, achieve individual goals. This range of products and services makes billing complicated. New customer setups, software sales, hardware sales, follow-on orders, all the usual types of transactions you'd expect from a company of our type. So one of our key departmental metrics is the backlog of setup and billing work to be done. We're in danger of missing our service level agreements to pass new customers off to the implementation teams, the metric will tell us. So we devised a KPI that allocated an average task time to each transaction type in our billing queue. New account setup takes about 180 minutes. Billing travel, hardware, service, software, and other line items to an already built account takes much less time. Therefore, our backlog is heavily weighted to new account sales. By multiplying the average transaction time by the number of items in queue, we were able to estimate workload backlog for each billing type and for each team. Add them all up, and you can see that the billing backlog by team in this example, we have about 80 hours of work in queue. Next, we created a visually easy way for people to see the metric, and we displayed it on screens as a graph showing the backlog movement for each team over time, starting in September of 14. Our original goal for creating this particular KPI was to be able to see a building backlog and to mandate overtime when necessary, and as 4 Winds grew its business, to be able to hire additional personnel ahead of the growth. I had absolutely no ROI plan for displaying this metric. It was solely a tool to make sure that we met our service level agreements to our installation colleagues. Simple logical goals, but the results shocked even me. The first surprise happened about a month in when our healthcare team had a bigger backlog than our transportation team. Without any pushing from me, the team leads decided to start sharing resources to even out the workloads. All these teams have significant peaks and troughs as sales ebb and flow, yet the graph shows a relatively narrow backlog for every team. Even the spikes that occurred in our enterprise team when a flurry of new customers were added were short-lived as team members helped out and brought the backlogs quickly under control. The second thing that happened was we started to see innovation from teams on how to cut the transaction processing times. With the average event times now in plain view, teams started working on how they could improve the systems to cut our event times to lower the overall workload. So how does that show up on the graph? Overall, the graph looks stable, with gradual improvement over the period. Well, here's the interesting thing. 4 Winds grew its business around 31% over the period in the graph. We didn't hire a single extra person, and we don't plan to hire any more people this year as we grow over 30% again. Yet the backlog stayed stable because they increased productivity. During this time, we also reduced our service level interval by 20% and reduced overtime by 70%. None of these things were predefined goals for the investment. This is what Jack Stack calls the unexpected benefits of open book management. So honestly, did the visual layer achieve this? Absolutely not. An extraordinary team of dedicated, engaged, and really smart employees did this. They did it mostly without being managed, they did it collaboratively, and they did it quickly. However, if we had not created the KPI and displayed it, it would not have happened. One thing to note, I think it was important that we displayed all the teams on the same graph. If each team had had a separate workload graph, the divergence of workload would not have been so obvious. So thoughtful design of your KPI displays is really important to achieve maximum benefit. In a moment, I'll explain how I designed one completely wrong and then fixed it. So what's the ROI on this one display? Well, let's take a stab. This analysis is for 5 screens above the accounting team. First, the costs. One-time hardware purchases for 5 sets of screens and players at $1,500 per set is around $7,500. 4 Winds provides professional services to deliver the applications you need to display your key metrics. Of course, services costs depend on exactly what you're trying to achieve and where your data is coming from, but $10,000 would be a decent average. Finally, a good average for our software is $100 per month per screen. 5 screens for 3 years, about $18,000 total. If we amortize the one-time costs over 3 years, the whole package comes out to about $1,000 a month for the entire billing department. Really a very modest investment, which is considerably less than 1% of our departmental monthly salary budget. I wonder if we can achieve an improvement greater than 1%. Let's see. First benefit, evening out the workload. Difficult to measure, but we consistently save about 70 hours a month of overtime that was absorbed by the teams with the lighter loads. Call it $2,800 a month in overtime avoided. This covered the investment all by itself with a 2.8 times return. And don't forget, this was when we grew our business 31%. A 30% increase in overall capacity driven by innovation saved 6 additional headcount that would otherwise have been needed to cover the 31% growth. Call it $24,000 a month, roughly a 24 to 1 return. What's more, I'm confident that our team can repeat the productivity gains this year and will grow 30% without additional headcount. So as you can see, the ROI isn't marginal. It soundly beats the ROI on most investments I can make. Improved service to our customers through faster handoff, hard to add a dollar value, so I won't try, but certainly worth something. Here's a really big one, again hard to measure. Increased pride in the overall departmental performance. Hard to quantify value in dollar terms, but the billing and AR teams have an 88% employee engagement score on a standardized Gallup survey and had negligible employee turnover in the period. Tell me what that's worth. Again, of course, I cannot claim that this was all the result of a single display sign, but our visual communications layer was a significant catalyst for the improvements we achieved, and I'll tell you that I believed this long before Four Winds paid me to believe it. I believed it when I was investing my own money in flat screens at far higher prices than we pay today. Okay, now, I'm sure I have some smart financial analysts out there who've spotted the flaw in that ROI logic, and why those numbers are basically wrong. In the prior example, I allocated the entire $1,000 monthly cost of the 5 departmental screens to this one displayed metric. But of course, thanks to Content Manager, this metric is only one of many KPIs that are revolving on the displays all day long. This one takes up roughly 4% of the daily 10-hour time window. And so it's really only fair to allocate 4% of the monthly cost, call it $40, which multiplies the overall return on this KPI by 25 times. We have many other opportunities to move the KPI needle using that same screen real estate at no extra cost. So let's look at some more ways that we use the displays and see if we can find more compounding of the ROI. Accounts receivable is the second key workload element for these same teams. Last September, we started showing the daily status of the AR aging buckets on a graph like this. And of course, we expected that displaying this would cause the metric to improve. Nothing happened. We didn't get much traction, enthusiasm, or improvement. Why? Surely Mr. Stack and Mr. Drucker can't be wrong. After all, we were on a total roll with the whole workload thing. It took me a while to realize that looking at the static daily metric gave them no continuum for reference and trending. They could see where they were today, but not where they'd been or where they were trying to go. There was no goal. The daily data was too abstract. Pretty basic stuff, but to be honest, I missed it. So we started displaying the same AR aging buckets, but this time over an extended period as a graph. We captured the trend lines in each bucket, and as I showed you in the picture earlier, every team had their aging proudly displayed over their workspace. I was really happy when team leads started gathering teams around the screens every morning to see where they stood. Conversations could be heard about how to tackle the 90-day plus buckets and to tackle the largest individual balances. The displays were working. Additionally, a lot of our billing is annual recurring. So they came up with a new program completely out of left field to pre-advise customers of upcoming billing so that the customer's PO process could start a month earlier. Again, we saw significant innovation merely because of the displays. All of this focus improvement created an overall drop in accounts receivable of almost $3 million so far this year. No BS, this happened, and it happened fast, just one quarter. That's $3 million we're no longer borrowing under our line of credit at an annual interest savings of around $150,000. However, there is a downside. This graph takes longer for viewers to digest looking at the screens, so we have to leave it up for twice as long as the workload graphic, so it uses about 8% of the daily screen time. So let's call that one $80 a month for the 5 screens. I bet you've all worked out the ROI on that one already. $150,000 of savings is $12,500 a month divided by $80 gives you an ROI of, well, you get the idea. The ROI was unexpected and extraordinary. Going into Q2, we wanted some new energy to sustain this improvement and to target our oldest receivables. So we decided to have a little fun with our teams, which is another key concept that makes the top 10 list. Have fun and promote healthy competition. We took our AR aging buckets, gave every dollar of past due accounts receivable a points value. The older the receivable, the higher the points value. $1 million of current AR, 1 million points. 200,000 of 30-day past due, 400,000 points, twice the value. For the really old stuff, 151 days past due gets 10x the value. You get the idea. At the start of the monthly game cycle, each team has a weight, the sum of its AR points. The idea of our biggest loser game is to lose weight in each weekly cycle by collecting AR, with the oldest receivables having the highest value. Prizes included a weekly team lunch at a cost of $220 and unlimited bragging rights for a 7-day period. I have to say that nobody actually got sent home from the ranch for failing to lose weight, but they did get to wash the coffee cups at the end of each day, which I'm telling you was not popular. The results from Biggest Loser are honestly the highlight of the week in this department. The cheering can be heard across the company, and morale has never been higher. Simple stuff, a fun game, well displayed, moved the needle. The results, and this has only been going on for about 8 weeks, but our 151-day-old AR aging is already down by $180,000 after being stuck for months. The game and the screens automatically directed the effort where it was most needed towards the oldest receivables. This was money we'd already written off and which we get to write back. Again, I must stress, a visual communications program did not do this. Smart, motivated people achieved this. But the public presentation of the metrics and the competition improved focus in a way, and this is the key, that we had not previously been able to do. ROI? The slides have a lot of data and are complex to read, so Biggest Loser gets 12% of the daily airtime. $120 a month plus $800 a month for lunches. Return so far, $180,000 in AR that we deemed uncollectible. Virtually infinite ROI and, interestingly, the sign cost allocation about 20% of the cost of the lunches. Perhaps cut back on food next month and invest in a visual communications layer. So I'm coming to the end of my allotted time, but before I open up for questions, I'd like to tell you briefly about the new signs that we're working on for launch this quarter. One of my priorities for Q3 is to close the accounting month faster. We're working on a design to capture the key close timetable elements each month, track completion dates, set SMART goals, and measure performance. I'm betting that by September, we'll have cut the close time from 32 days to 15 without any additional staff by merely focusing energy and attention on the problem through the displays. Of course, there's no monetary return on this metric, but still a very worthwhile goal, and after all, my other metrics paid for the signs a few thousand times over. Other key initiatives include a reduction in the use of credit cards by our customers. This currently costs 4Winds $400,000 a year in bank fees. We're going to shine a light on it, develop a strategy to reduce it, and cut it to a run rate of $200,000 by year end. Honestly, I have no idea how to do that yet, but my awesome team will figure it out once we display where we are and where we want to get to. Our CMO, Janet Eden-Harris, will invite you all back to hear how it went later in the year. My final initiative is to develop a tablet-based executive dashboard that will display all our key metrics for David, myself, and the other key leaders here. That's an exciting use of our software that doesn't have incremental hardware costs because we've all got tablets, and it's incredibly popular with some of our larger enterprise customers. But that's my final tip. Don't try and do everything at once. A 2 or a 3 month cycle is really the best for introducing new KPI concepts and initiatives. If you do everything at once, the effort becomes confused and diluted and may fail to achieve the best possible results. The remaining 76% of available screen time is made available to human resources to drive employee engagement, to leadership for displaying long-term corporate messaging, and general company interest. I think the next webinar in this series is going to be Elizabeth Mays, our VP of Human Resources, and she'll explain how she's used the visual layer to increase employee engagement and reduce turnover significantly. You won't want to miss it. So I hope I've demonstrated how the thoughtful use of KPIs, well displayed, has driven extraordinary returns for 4Winds. Whenever you're thinking of making an investment of this type, obviously projecting the ROI is an element of the analysis. I have to say it's very difficult to project the ROI with any degree of accuracy or, frankly, credibility. When I think about this problem, I simply have to consider the modest outlay versus the potentially exponential improvement in really key areas of leverage across the business. Thank you so much for your time today. Thanks to Peter Drucker and Jack Stack for their foundational insights. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have. To ask a question, just email us at webinar@4windsinteractive.com. While we take questions, we're going to rotate several pre-made screen applications that you can find in the FWI application store. It's kind of like the App Store for a cell phone. We're developing hundreds of standard applications for our software that can be configured and displayed in literally minutes. This exciting new approach is a key differentiator from our competitors, who still have to develop every application from scratch, with the ensuing cost and time delays. Like the App Store, it's truly an industry game changer. Okay, so while I wait for questions, let me scroll through a couple of screens, and as the questions come in, I'll take them.
Thank you, Nigel. I think we have just a couple minutes left, and we did get a handful of questions even while you were speaking. The first one that I think everybody would like to hear from you is essentially, what are employees' reactions to the signs? Do they like them?
You know, that's a great question, Janet. So I've been doing this for a very long time. When I first started putting signs up, the reaction was mixed. I think employees are nervous naturally when they start to see performance measured and displayed. The guys who are performing well love it because they're seen at the top of the screen every week. The teams that are at the bottom hate it. So I was a little concerned, and it could have gone one of two ways. But what we saw was the bottom teams pulled themselves up, and the competition to be midway or higher was pretty fierce. Occasionally, you'll have individuals self-select out of the organization because they don't like a light shone on their performance. We haven't seen that generally. What we've generally seen is an uplift, and as it's clear that we use the screens as a positive reinforcement mechanism rather than to beat the people at the bottom, in general, it goes pretty well.
Yeah, I think you have some great team members. It's always fun to go visit your department. We have another question in here, which is we asked about the employees. Now let's ask about the CEO, David. Does David buy into the ROI calculations that you've made?
Well, you can't dispute the ROI calculations that I just sort of gave in this webinar. They're factual. We invested money and we got a return. I suppose one could debate how much of it was due exclusively to the screens themselves. The biggest loser game. How much do you attribute to the game? How much do you attribute to the screen? But I will tell you that the combination of interesting initiatives, active management, and display screens is what achieved the results. And the screen cost, frankly, is so minimal compared to the cost of employees and other initiatives that we launch every day that it should be an automatic investment.
Yep. It's really a sort of a form of change management for the business. I think we have time for one more question, if you're willing to take it. This one, how many screens do you have rotating through at a time? And who's responsible for refreshing all that data?
Wow, that's a great question. I have to tell you, I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I know the screens that we put up for key performance indicators, but the number of screens that are the screen time that's given up to the other departments, it does it all automatically. The content manager pulls the content that we designate from all of the different places. I could hazard a guess at maybe 100 screens.
All right.
But honestly, I don't know, because it's all on autopilot, which is a key element of this program. If you have to spend too much time doing this every day, it will typically fall into disrepair.
That's great. All right, well, I think we have run out of time, and I know we have some additional questions that have come through. So we'll be sure to capture those, and we'll get back to you. Again, use that same email address if you'd like to get a copy of this, because we have recorded it, and we will get that back out to you. Thank you for your time, and we'll invite you to the next one coming up at the end of June. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your attention today.